We all grew up reading comics. They were a fun way to pass time and at times was a topic of discussion amongst our friends. The kids today have a variety of comics to choose from. DC and Marvel comics are two of the fan favorites. Japanese comics, or manga as they are called, are also becoming popular in Indians, and they are surely not limited to kids and teenagers. Even adults are among the manga fans. I confess that even I enjoy reading manga from time to time. Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, to name a few. But how many of us remember our Indian comics? Can you, the viewer, name a few? Hi and welcome. This is TFI English, the National Socio-Political Analysis arm of the TFI Media Group. And I am your host Piyush. In this video, I will tell you how the Indian comic industry is on the verge of extinction. Let's begin. Sony on Sunday released the first look of Spider-Man Into the SpiderVerse sequel titled SpiderMan Across the SpiderVerse, and fans across the globe went berserk at the surprise drop. The first part, starring Miles Morales as a Spider-Man in the expanded universe, opened up to rave reviews and gained critical acclaim as well as an Oscar. The teaser trailer, however, caught the eyes of Desis as a web-slimming Miles waded through India. As the teaser opens, Miles follows Gwen Stacy through portals, and judging by the Indian classical sounds and Hindi text appearing on screen, Miles seems to be web-slinging across the country. While a global franchise seemingly paid tribute to the Indian comic book art, the industry finds itself in tatters at the moment. In the 1980s and 90s, India was considered one of the top 5 countries that produced superhero comics. Some of these golden age superheroes included Nagraj, Dogra, Parmanu, Shaktiman, Dhruv, Shakti, and many more. The entire millennial generation grew up reading and savoring them. However, comic books existed much before the aforementioned golden period as well. Chanda Mama comics in 1940s and 1950s were based on the ancient Indian history. Then came the Amar Chitra Katha, which became a cult phenomenon among the public. However, the comic book industry has been in a downward spiral in the post-millennial era. The advent of cable TV, mobile phones, and most importantly, the inability of Indian comic book publishers to reinvent themselves, the industry is slowly edging towards its end. In the West, comic books, meanwhile, are going through their golden age, with big movie production houses spending millions to amalgamate the fiction of comics with the fiction of motion cameras. Meanwhile, in countries like Japan, the manga comic book culture is still growing and bubbling. So how did India manage to lose the plot? As Indian comic book aficionados grew in numbers in the 70s, the greedy publishers across the country went on a spree of churning volumes. Quality became a distant parameter as the focus shifted on quantity. Thus, the comic book source material became haphazard, too plastic, and at times outrageously bad. For an industry that is solely based on fiction, the Indian creators could not find the middle ground and spectacularly soiled the bed. Then came the lack of creating a cogent universe of comic books. Marvel Cinematic Universe is a term that most geeks and nerds across the world understand and use routinely in their vernacular discussion. However, before MCU, Marvel had its own comic universe where the rules were different. Characters interacted with each other, making the comic book reading experience fulfilling. The comic book universe ensured that people invested for a long time and kept coming back to it, even after losing touch. However, in the Indian comic scene, nothing of that sort transpired. Barring an occasional crossover, the comics mostly remained standalone. Characters remained in their bubbles, and that led to saturation of storylines. Compare that to Marvel or DC. Their comic book universes encompass different multiverses, meaning a Spider-Man on Earth 616 might be different from Spider-Man on Earth 67. Similarly, Barry Allen's Flash on Earth 1 may be different from the one presented on Earth 2. Thus, creators had a vast playfield to explore their ideas, take their characters to new avenues, experiment, re-experiment, and ensure that perfect, digestible storyline is created which spans decades. Moreover, the writers were and are paid comparatively better in West, while the Indian creators continue to work on minimum wages. The demise of Indian comic book culture was a mishmash of a lot of external factors, but mostly it boiled down to the failure of reinventing the comics with the changing times that led to the downfall.